Well, hello there, my fellow human beings. If you are listening to this broadcast, then you are probably turning on the radio in an attempt to feel connected again to a world that has separated all of us in so many ways. That, or the subliminal messaging campaign is working. Either way, you found me, and that is all that matters. It does not matter if you chose or were compelled to listen to today's stories, but I welcome your ears, hearts, and minds to join me tonight in finding the truth. I am your best friend and definitely 100% reliable news source, Constantine. I will be the host of this lovely radio show. Ignore the knocking at your door that grows ever louder, beckoning you to open it. And join me in my little corner of the world. Welcome to Constantine's Corner. Well, it looks like today's stories are all about crime or criminals. We will start with a small one, but be sure to stick around because I have a very big story later on that you do not want to miss. Before we get to the news, I would like to make a quick announcement. As I'm sure all of you know, this month is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Breast cancer is a terrible illness that affects both women and men. About 1 in 8 U.S. women, which is about 12%, will develop invasive breast cancer over the course of her lifetime. And in 2020, an estimated 276,000 new cases of invasive breast cancer are expected to be diagnosed in women in the U.S., along with 48,000 new cases of non-invasive breast cancer. On top of this figure, there will be another 2,600 new cases of invasive breast cancer to be diagnosed in men in 2020. And for women in the US, cancer deaths are predominantly caused by breast cancer above any other type of cancer, just behind lung cancer. Now, many of our citizens have already been displaying support for breast cancer research and awareness through wearing pink clothing, dyeing their hair pink, and even repainting their vehicles. Our government has decided to hold a large event on the fast-approaching October the 29th. Our city will come out in support of breast cancer research, and on that day, we're going to have many events to try and raise awareness. El Toro Customs, a sponsor of this show, is even offering a free paint job to apply pink to your vehicle on that day, so be sure to show your support by heading over there. This is a time for our community to come together for a great cause, and I hope to see you all there. If you are interested in donating to breast cancer research, there are many options to choose from, but here are a few you might be interested in giving to. The National Breast Cancer Foundation, the Breast Cancer Alliance, the American Cancer Society, breastcancer.org, and the National Cancer Center. These are all highly rated charities who do great work in researching breast cancer, and your support would go a long way in their hands. Now, on to our news. Beginning with a little personal story real quick, I finally managed to purchase myself a new van. I got it upgraded and repainted at El Toro Customs. It is a pearl, purple, and blue burrito van with purple underglow. Sadly, ever since they recalled the Paradise van and you cannot purchase them anymore, I had to settle for that. You will be forever missed, Squid Van. Maybe if I can get some more money, I can have a single one imported just for me, but for now, this will do. Alright, our first story begins as I chased down a police cruiser that was flaring its lights and racing towards what was presumably a crime in progress. You see, I tend to follow police cruisers a lot in hopes of getting interesting stories. So, just remember, if you see a big, dark blue van with blue stripes and purple underglow ceaselessly following your every move, you are not about to be murdered. I'm just trying to get my next scoop. As I followed the cruiser, we sped off towards the Voodoo Place docks. We arrived and several police were already parked out front. I pulled off to the side and immediately started taking photographs, and EMS showed up on scene just shortly after I did. Then, suddenly, the echo of gunfire began to emanate from the large building. Officers rushed into the docks, and I was ordered to get behind cover. So, of course, I climbed up on some shipping containers to get a better look. The shooting went on for a few minutes before EMS were called to enter the building. I quickly jumped off the shipping containers and hopped into one of the EMS vehicles so that I could get a better look at the scene. There, I saw a man in a white hoodie down on the ground bleeding out, and there were several officers that lied unconscious. EMS rushed to begin life-saving measures as I began to record and listen to figure out what had happened. EMS managed to patch up everyone on the scene, and police then quickly cleared the area. Then, an officer approached the vehicle I was in and told me that apparently there was a gang of armed local civilians within the large building. Something had happened, and they opened fire on a man in the white hoodie. Then, police arrived, and they rushed in to retrieve him to get him medical attention. But when they did, the armed civilians opened fire on the officers. Officers returned fire and managed to take them down, but not before something happened. These armed people launched canisters of gas at these officers, 2 of which suffocated on the toxic fumes and passed out. Major Smoke went in alone and managed to use his shotgun to courageously take down the remaining hooligans. Now, this story wouldn't seem like much at first, but then I got to thinking. The gas. Where did these criminals acquire toxic gas? It is severely restricted, and it seems like a weapon meant for terrorism, not the everyday normal shootouts we are all accustomed to. Where did they get it? Who armed them with such chemicals? What were they guarding in that warehouse? These are questions I really need to answer. I'm beginning to piece something together here, but I can't quite figure it out. I have all the dots, but the connections have not been made. This is just another piece in the puzzle, and only time will tell where this fits in. Our next, final, and biggest story for you today is brought to us by the combined forces of the SAFD and EMS, our second ever sponsor. The wonderful people that work in the emergency services of the city are some of the most skilled I have ever seen, and I'm honored to be sponsored by them. Listeners, are you injured? Have you accidentally cut yourself while cooking? Lost a finger to a local gang? Ejected out of a vehicle going well over the speed limit directly into pavement? Went mountain climbing and forgot how your legs work, plummeting to your death? Riddled with bullets from your 5th shootout today? Or is the injury really in your mind, your very soul? Does the world itself hurt you by merely existing within it? Are you haunted by the fact that you are trapped in this body that only feels pain and hunger and constantly has to pee? I mean, what the fuck is that? Make up your mind, body. Do you want the water or not? Do you wish you could finally escape this fragile vessel, unleashed from the binding rights that hold you trapped within mortality? Well then, EMS can help. The miracle workers at Pillbox Hospital are capable of stitching any wound closed, resetting any bone, and replacing any organ. No matter the physical injury, they can get you back on your feet in no time. They have the cure for what ails you, unless what ails you is existence itself. Side effects of EMS treatment are common and include headache, nausea, vomiting, death, dizziness, dysentery, cardiac arrhythmia, mild heart explosions, varicose veins, darkened stool, darkened soul, lycanthropy, trucanthropy, hypersyphilis, arterial sclerosis, hemorrhoids, diabetes, virginity, mild discomfort, vampirism, gender impermanence, spontaneous dental hydroplosion, sugar high, more vomiting, the color brown, your mom, the reminder that existence is a prison trapping you from reclaiming your true form, and a mild rash. Talk to your doctor to see if your doctor is right for you. Thank you, EMS and SAFD, for your sponsorship. Now, on to our final and largest news story. Human beings, listeners, friends, I have some shocking news for you today. We have had a death in the city. A permanent passing of an individual. A Mr. Rain Bowes passed away several days ago. Mr. Bowes was a known criminal with a long history of violent acts. At one point, even serving a life sentence with no parole before he managed to escape custody. Mr. Bowes had not been seen within the city for some time, presumably keeping a low profile to avoid detection. He returned to the city several days ago and met up with a few of his friends. From what I was told, Mr. Bowes was gifted a helicopter as a welcome back present from one of his closest friends. But Mr. Bose lied about his skill at flying such a vehicle. He jumped in and set off into the sky to test out his new gift, but just then, something happened. A freak storm suddenly rolled in over the area. Fast, heavy winds, rain, and lightning filled the sky. Being an unskilled pilot, Mr. Bose had trouble controlling his aircraft, and after struggling to maintain control, he eventually crashed near the base of the mountain near the Alamo Sea in Sandy Shores. Police responded to the scene quickly, and EMS were called in to use their fancy new helicopters to find the wreckage. While the storm raged, both groups valiantly searched for Mr. Bose. A group of 3 EMS jumped from the helicopter in search of his body in the wreckage. After several minutes, they managed to recover him, and they began to take life-saving measures. They began CPR, but eventually had to intubate him and stick him on an emergency life support as they loaded him into the helicopter and quickly flew him to Pillbox. 3 primary doctors then began to assess the situation. They found that over 90% of his body had been burned to a blackened crisp. Doctors began to try life-saving measures in an attempt to bring him back, giving him 8 liters of O-negative blood. They spent nearly 20 minutes in a life-or-death battle. But sadly, death won. At the time of his arrival, all of Pillbox Hospital had been locked down to prevent interruptions. But I was told several of Mr. Bose's friends managed to run past and get to their newly crispy friend. Doctors then declared his time of death. His friends, Quincy, Miles, and Smoke, were there at his ICU bedside to say their goodbyes, holding a makeshift funeral right there in the hospital. After a tearful goodbye, the men exited the hospital and performed an impromptu 21-gun salute for their fallen friend. A sad day indeed for those who knew Mr. Bose. But there is one part of this story, listeners, that really caught my attention. Ask yourself this, listeners. How often have you seen someone die in this city? Some of you might answer many times, but think about it. Is that true? Really true? Has anyone else noticed this oddity? Shootings, stabbings, murders even do not end up with an honest victim. I thought maybe I just didn't notice it, but I dug further. I got a hold of EMS records and I found something strange. Indeed, I was right. A permanent death in this city only seemed to happen every 6 months, or in some cases, even longer. I skimmed through countless files. Fell 200 feet from a crane, miraculous recovery. Got eviscerated by helicopter blades, miraculous recovery. Riddled with 100 bullet wounds, including shots to the head, miraculous recovery. Murdered, recovered. Stabbed 50 times, recovered. Crushed, recovered. All of them recovered. I know I said that EMS are miracle workers, but this is something else entirely. I'm sure all of us at one time or another have experienced severe or otherwise deadly injury, and yet 99.99% of us are still here to tell about it. What is happening here, listeners? How are doctors able to treat such extensive wounds? I have been doing research looking into the hospital, listeners. I know they seem to be getting funding from an unknown organization, possibly even the government itself. What is going on behind the scenes of this place of healing that is allowing it to perform such miraculous, miracles? And this death, it has shone a light on a strangeness in our reality that little seem to notice or care about. Was this planned? Was Mr. Rain Bose killed by the government? I'm sure you thought it, same as I. A freak weather storm crashed his helicopter? We all know who controls the weather. Was this a targeted attack on Mr. Bose? Why would they go out of their way to kill him? Did they order the doctors to let him perish? Why did he die and not others? Why did they lock down the hospital so no one could enter? 90% of his body was burned and unrecognizable. There's just so many questions, so little answers. Something strange is definitely happening in our city, listeners. I think there are factors and factions beyond my knowledge playing with life and death itself, and I will find the truth. All of these things pieced together. I know it. This, the gas, the coffee, the weather, the frogs even. Something is happening just out of view, at the edge of our daily lives, hidden behind a veil of secrecy and control. Listeners, I will continue to cover this story. In a way, I thank Mr. Rainbows for his death, as I believe it has shone a spotlight on a hitherto darkened place within our city. May he rest in peace. Listeners, that is all the stories that I have for you today. Thank you for tuning in to Constantine's Corner. I will get to the bottom of this, listeners. With your continued support and countless eyes and ears, I will gather the collective knowledge of our community and finally piece this puzzle together. So, if you or someone you know has seen or heard anything weird within the city, or you just have some random news you wish to share with the public, be sure to contact me. You can either send me an email in Discordia at Neon Scorpion Gaming, or text my phone in the city at 670-2822. That's 670-2822, and let me know that you wish to meet with me in the city. I want to thank you all for your continued support. I am honestly shocked at the wonderful reception that this odd little radio show has received within the city. You all continue to inspire me and to motivate me. I love you all. And thank you again to our sponsors, El Toro Customs and the SAFD and EMS departments. Without you, I couldn't afford my new van, and your patronage helps me continue to investigate. Well, whether you sought out my temporary companionship in an attempt to reconnect to a world you feel disconnected from in its entirety, or the ongoing subliminal messaging system around the city compelled you to tune in, I welcomed your ears, hearts, and minds. Thank you, my lovely human beings, for tuning in to Constantine's Corner. Goodbye, and good night. Hey, Steve, could you... Oh, right, you forgot to feed the cat. Guess I'm gonna have to Google how to bury a body. Maybe hide one? You chop it up in little pieces, or... I'll figure it out. Okay, Google. Best ways to hide a body. 3 million results. Let's see it.